Hi FlossTube, welcome back to the Blue Box Stitcher, my channel where I talk about cross stitch. Today is a FlossTube extra and it's going to be all about vintage patterns. So over the past few months I've collected a few vintage patterns and kits and I wanted to do a little vintage haul. I love watching them. I just like seeing what used to be in style. And I've fallen down a deep rabbit hole. And so I invite you to come into the rabbit hole with me. So for this video, most of these kits and patterns are from eBay, but I also have a couple from thrift stores and Facebook. And so I'm gonna go into them and then what I thought of each platform. And then at the end, I'm gonna talk about kind of the kits themselves. I have started a couple and what I've thought of them, and then I also want to get into kind of where to find patterns for free and my tips for getting patterns more easily than I guess I want to also kind of talk about where to find patterns for free and how to fulfill that urge of wanting to buy everything in sight without actually buying everything in sight. With that being said, let's get into the goods. So, a little bit of backstory. I started stitching a couple years ago. My mom bought me a kit for Christmas, started it, was obsessed. And I've really done only modern patterns. And I was like, and I think this happens to a lot of people. You look at the vintage patterns that other people buy and are stitching and you're like, that's ugly. That's crazy. Ugly. I think for a lot of people, they hold a nostalgia factor. I was born in 2000, so the 90s don't hold a lot of nostalgia for me. Sorry. But like the more you watch them, the more you're like, I gotta stitch that goose. That house, I need it. I need a Victorian manor. You just like fall. Okay, my neighbors just started doing construction. I hope that's fine. I literally waited all day for them to stop, but I guess that's what happens when you build a house directly next to every other house on the block. Anyways, where was I? You fall down the rabbit hole. You're like, actually, I need that. And then you learn about eBay. And so what happened to me was I joined a bunch of Facebook de-stash groups after watching a video about one on FlossTube. I'm sorry, I don't remember which one it was. But I found out about these Facebook de-stash groups, and what they are is they're a group on Facebook that you request to join, and once you accept their rules, you can be either a seller, a buyer, or a lurker. And for a long time, I was a lurker. So basically people post patterns and kits and fabric and pretty much anything cross-stitch related on them. I think some do it from like their personal collection that they've amassed over decades and they're just trying to de-stash, like they're trying to get rid of some of their collection. Some of them I think probably buy cross-stitch and try to sell them on these seller groups. But I think for the most part, like the de-stash groups are people trying to get rid of their own stuff. And so for a while that kind of like ticked the urge for me where I just would like look at them and I would be really interested in the patterns, but I never actually like bit the bullet and bought one for like a few months. And then I saw this pattern on one of my groups and I fell in love and I was like, I need it. I need it immediately. And this one, so most groups, it's first come, first serve. So they post a picture with a price, and then you comment below it, me please, and whoever comments me please first, they get the invoice. And they normally send the invoices over PayPal. But the group that I was in, it was a lottery style. I actually really like the lottery style better. It's called Dash to De-Stash. And they have like one seller per week and they post their collection and then you comment on which ones you want and then you're like entered into a lottery for that piece and whoever wins gets the invoice. and I find that it's priced a lot more reasonably. And so I entered. I needed this pattern. I did not win. I actually forced one of my friends to join the D-Stash group and try to comment so they could also try to get it for me. Then I was like, well, that's a bummer. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. But I'd kind of been like, I don't want to buy patterns off of eBay and stuff because once you start, you're in it. Well, then the election came in November. Your girl, like, trust circle, got a little drunk and was sad about the state of life. I live in the US, in case that wasn't obvious. And around 1 a.m., I placed a Facebook order. And so that's how this started. And I bought that pattern and another pattern. And things sort of devolved from there. So without further ado, 6 minutes in, let's start the haul. This was the first pattern I bought. This is what started it all. You're gonna die. You're gonna be like, what is that? That's crazy. How is this the pattern that made you obsessed? I only have like the little front cover page, but it's this. It's called Good Friends Listen, and it says Good Friends Listen, Best Friends Here. I actually think when I stitch it, I'm not gonna stitch the words. These chickens, these hens, they're sipping tea, they're spilling tea. And I don't know what it was about them, but I was like, that's me and my friends. Just a bunch of hens clutching our pearls. Sipping tea, spilling tea. And I was like, I want to stitch that and put it in my kitchen. I need it. I think it's incredible. Something about them, I was like, I gotta get these girls up. I gotta get them up. Like, their beaks literally have lipstick. I can't get over their pearls. They're all drinking tea, and they're just a bunch of gossiping hens. And I am that. So this is what started it all. I haven't actually started it. But this is what led me down the rabbit hole. It's a dimensions kit. It comes with cotton thread, 14 count beige Aida, a needle, and easy instructions. Low-key, when I was looking through my stuff, I was like, where's the pattern for this? That's a problem for another day. But this is kit number 1. In that same order, this is the only one I don't have a picture for because it's actually the only one that I started. And I just lost the cover photo, so I'll put it up here. But it's Wizard by Dimensions. I think that's like I don't know. It's just like Wizard's Kit by Dimensions. Like if you look that up on eBay, it'll come up. And I originally saw it on, I want to say Can the Stitchers floss tube. I think that's where I saw it first. I feel like we started ours around the same time. So maybe I saw it somewhere else. But she's who I can think of. But I saw it, and I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, I need it. That's a D&D stitch. Because I like to cross-stitch during D&D. But I wanted something like easy to stitch on, and this was perfect. 14 count Aida, not a lot of colors. The pattern, a little confusing, but at the end of the video, when I kind of go into my tips and tricks and what you can expect, I will show you kind of how my tips for doing vintage kits and how that one's going along. If you've seen my previous West tubes, like you've seen it. That's really the only one I've started. Spoiler alert. I'm kind of like, I want to do one by one, but I also do see a point in the future where I just start the chickens because I need them on my wall. So those were the first 2 kits I bought. Then I just sort of was like, I need another one. And I was really trying to hold off. This, I will say, this collection is over the course of like 6 months. More than that. because that was in November, and then it's almost June. So I'm definitely not someone who buys a lot of stuff at once. I really try not to. I don't really have the like financial capabilities to do that. So just to be clear, like this is over a long time. The next one that I got off eBay was this. I'll bring you in for a closer look. Basically, it's this fairy in these tulips, and it is the Flutter Blossom family tulip, and it's by Janlin. I actually have, I like to go, when I look up kits on eBay, I like to look them up by designer because it kind of weeds out like weird random kits that are just from like drop shippers. And so I was looking up Janlin kits and I saw this and I bought it. This one I do have a bit of embarrassment about because I didn't have a lot of experience buying things off eBay, and I placed a bid for it on an auction at like 2 a.m. A lot of these are late night impulse purchases, I will admit. And then the next day I was like, I should have checked to see if it was anywhere else on eBay cheaper. And then I found it somewhere cheaper, bought it, and was like, okay, I'll go cancel my bid. Well, it turns out you can't cancel bids. So I almost bought it twice. I messaged the seller and was like, hey, is there any way I could cancel my order? And she let me, which is very nice of her. But won't be making that mistake twice. Kind of embarrassed about it. Felt like I fed into capitalism a little bit there, but I am obsessed with her. She's just like, I love tulips. I have a tulip pattern going, and so I've kind of decided that I can't start this until I finish my other tulip pattern. But tulips are my favorite flower. It's so weird. Like this pot. The pot's kind of ugly, TBH. But I think I gotta stitch the pot. And I'm just like, I saw her and I needed her. And that's the theme with a lot of these. Saw it, needed it. Yeah. I'm obsessed. I will say, I feel like her wings look a little weird. I might make them like blue. I just don't think they're that obvious that they're wings. This is what the back of the kit, this is what they look like when they come sealed. This is like a good example. You just get the front cover page, and then you get a mess of floss. We'll discuss how to tackle the floss. And then typically 14 count Aida. The Aida is definitely kind of crunchy. So far, it hasn't been super starchy, which is good. And so the ones that I've used, it's been like pretty enjoyable to stitch on. It's not, you know, it's not hand-dyed Aida. It's not 16 count, it's not 18 count. I primarily stitch on Aida, so it doesn't really bother me. And I also feel like 14 count is the easiest, and so sometimes I'm like, I want to pull out my kits to just do some easy stitching. But you can stitch them like on nicer fabric if you want. But yeah, I think the appeal of these is also, they just, like, you buy it and it's all there. You don't have to be like, what fabric should I use? Should I use the called for? Should I not? Should I use the DMC? Should I use the fancy flosses? What count should I do? Like, you buy it, you got it. Ready to start, sort of. Again, the floss situation is crazy. But that is the other kit I got off eBay. And then I was like, girl, you gotta stop. So I did, for now. But yes, very cute. Next up, I also got this off eBay. I was looking at books because I do kind of want to collect cross-stitch books. And there goes the lawnmower. I don't know, I just think I don't personally want to amass a huge stash collection. obviously this is all going into my stash, but in general, I live like in very small houses or apartments. I move pretty much once or twice a year. And I just like can't have like huge boxes of stuff. And I also kind of want to be someone who, when I buy something, I want to be starting it. Like, it doesn't have to be immediately, but I want to be starting it like conceivably in the next year or something. Like, it's got to be in my plans. I can't be like, maybe I'll start this in 10 years. If I want to do that, I'll buy it in 10 years. So I was looking, but I think books are cool because they're examples of like alphabets and different motifs. I actually haven't come really across any cross-stitch books like that on eBay, but I was looking at books and I discovered booklets. And then I discovered The Cross-Stitch Birthday Fairies, A Design for Every Month by Barbara Batts, American School of Needlework. Here you go. So I'll show you, this is the front. And so basically it's like a different fairy per month. This is the back. And I thought this was super cute because I was like, I could stitch my friends all their birthday fairies, which I think would be so cute. I think it would be really cute. And the really cool thing about this is it came like it didn't say it in the description, but I guess the seller had started one of the fairies and decided to just include it. So this is one of the fairies. She's like halfway done. She is this fairy right here. So what is that? May's fairy. Oh, it's May. And so I eventually want to finish her and just have like both of our stitching side by side. But I don't know, I was like, that is so cool. And so, yeah, the way it's kind of designed, obviously I can't like show you the patterns, but I'll put her over the pattern. But it's like this side has all the materials needed, and then this side has the pattern for each fairy. And I will say, so it has, this one is like definitely more involved than the kits because it's a booklet. So you have to get your own floss and stuff, but it also is like a fancier pattern, I guess. And like they recommend stitching in 14 count 8. I think I would actually probably for these buy like a small cut, cool like hand dyed fabric. Like I think a lot of them, it'd be cool to get like a sparkly fabric, an opalescent. But they have, for each color, they have an anchor, a coats, and a DMC conversion. And then for the wings, you're supposed to use pearl blending filament. And then you also need green seed beads from Mill Hill. So they do have, I also have a question. Like one of the columns says Coats / Krynic. I thought Krynic only did metallic glass, but Coats definitely is like another DMC brand, DMC-like brand. They all say Anchor / Krynic, Coats / Krynic, DMC / Krynic. So there's definitely Krynic in this. Maybe it's like the conversion for the Krynic. Yeah, it's the DMC conversion, the Coats conversion, and the Anchor conversion for the Krynic. So this is like, I'm saying this is just more involved. It requires, like if I did it, I would do the DMC, I would do and then I would also do the Krynic, and I would need the blending filament, and I would need the seed beads. And one thing that I have a few booklets like these at this point that I'll show obviously, but I have not really stitched from any of them yet. And so I would be really curious to see, obviously DMC, like the benefit of it is that the dialects do not really change, but this one was published in do I know? Okay, it doesn't really say, to be honest. How does it not say the date? What happened to 1994? That's like 30 years ago, right? Yeah. So I don't know if DMC has changed in 30 years. Surely some of the dial-outs have. So I don't know if you could still do the DMC conversion or not. If you know, let me know. And I don't know, maybe when I start one of these really old patterns, I'll make a video about it. But yes, love her. Last look. Here, I'll show you February's first. I think I'm gonna stitch February 1st because my birthday's in February. I do think I'm gonna do a color conversion because I think she's really cute, but like, I don't know if those are my colors. Loki, I think she's actually one of the more boring ones, but I still think she's cute. Yeah, I love these gals. Although now that I'm looking at it, maybe I'll just make January, February. January is so pretty. Maybe I'll like combine them. We'll see. So that's what I got off eBay. That's what I have gotten off eBay to date. And my thoughts on eBay. What I do on eBay is maybe I'll save my thoughts till the end because I feel like we're getting a lot of gaps between this haul. The next one that I got is the only one I've gotten from Facebook. Even though that's like what started this all, I actually don't really buy from D-stash groups. And this is the only thing that I've bought from a D-stash because it specifically had something that I wanted, like I knew I wanted. This is actually really the only one that this is the only one that it had something that I was looking for specifically. I knew I wanted to buy, which is State Flowers, charted for cross stitch and needlepoint. Very cute. It's like obviously I can't show you the inside because they're charts, but it's just like small charts for each of the state flowers. It actually included District of Columbia, where I'm from, which I was kind of surprised about. Most people forget that we also have this. And the reason I bought it was because it has blue bonnets. So I live in Texas right now, and I really want to do a blue bonnet stitch, and for some reason I was having a lot of trouble. Like I started on Etsy and stuff to find a more modern pattern, but couldn't really find any blue bonnet patterns at all. And the ones that I did see, I didn't really like. I wanted a more dainty one, like kind of in this older style. And so I got it. And I'm super happy about it. I will say the blue bonnets, the issue with buying booklets like these is the pictures are so small. And you can't really see the pattern itself until you buy it. So although I really like these flowers and I do think I'm gonna stitch the blue bonnet from it, it's still not as dainty as I would have liked. Like if you zoom in real close, she's like kind of chunky. I wanted like tall, delicate fronds, you know? But I think I'll still stitch her, and I love, like, the thing I really like about booklets is I love that I can just, like, pick them up and, like, flip through them and look at them. It's just, like, very tactile almost. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. So I did get it off Facebook D-Stash, and this one was definitely the one that I was the most concerned that it wasn't gonna come. So I'll say that. Because I find that most people on D-Stash groups are just like old ladies with a lot of cross stitch. And gosh, sorry, I'm kind of tired. Yeah. We still love her, and I'm really happy that she came. Then lastly, the third category of places that I bought these vintage patterns from is my creative reuse store. I live in Austin, and so I have Austin Creative Reuse, which is essentially a thrift store dedicated to art supplies. So people donate art supplies, and then you can go and get them at really discounted prices. I believe it's a nonprofit, so like I think most of the people working there are volunteers, and I've actually thought about volunteering there before. I have zero time, so I can't do that right now, but I would like to someday in the future. And and they have like a huge, I was really interested to see if they would have any cross stitch. I think a lot of people find cross stitch just in regular thrift stores. I have never. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't go thrifting a ton. Like, I go to Goodwill. I've never seen cross stitch at a Goodwill. And people supposedly find it there. I haven't. At first, I just thought it was where I was going. Like, I moved here from DC, and I was like, well, I don't know. Do a lot of people cross stitch in DC? But now I'm in Texas, and I feel like I'm getting the vibe. I just feel like there's a lot of grandmas here that cross stitch more than DC. I don't know. Maybe that's just like based on nothing. But I just think if I would find cross stitch, it would be here. Like, and I haven't. But I do plan on. I've never checked out estate sales, and I do think those could be good locations. But the point is, I went to the Creative Reuse, and I wasn't sure if they'd have any cross stitch. They did. A lot. So the first place I looked was like in their materials section. So they had like Aida, they had some thread, not a lot. And then they had kits. And so I ended up picking up a Dimensions kit. This is the cover photo of butterflies. I had originally wanted to stitch this as a gift, and I think in the picture, she's very beautiful. However, this is one of the situations where I don't, because it is vintage, I don't like it. I think the pattern itself is very pretty. Unfortunately, you can see here, they don't do this anymore, but the way that they do it is they don't give you the pattern. It's not counted cross stitch, but it's also not stamped cross stitch. It's outlined. And it's clearly done by a machine. And so the outline does not actually align perfectly with the grid on the Aida. And you can also see they got lazy. And the outline, okay, is not in the shape of squares like the Aida is. They're putting like loosey-goosey organic shapes on the Aida, and you kind of have to like figure it out where like you should put a stitch, where you should not put a stitch, where you should add an extra stitch, because you can't make these you cannot make that on Aida. And so it's called like no count cross stitch is what they called it. It's from 1988 and I hate it. It literally says, what is no count cross stitch? Unstitched fabric is shown above. Areas to be stitched are outlined. Simply fill areas with cross stitch. No counting. Simple and quick. Well, there's a reason they don't do it anymore, and that's because it's ugly and really annoying. And I think also they wanted me to use 3 strands on 14 count Aida. I'm not as opposed to that now as I was when I started this kit, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do a loop start. Didn't really like how I find that 2 strands on my other kits look fine, but on this one it just looked not enough, even though it's also 14 count, and this whole outlining situation, it drove me crazy. So I think this is actually, I'm gonna UFO this, which is unfortunate because I actually was stitching it as a gift. I only really got this butterfly in, but I just don't enjoy stitching on it. I don't think it looks good, and I'm kind of over gift stitching at this point too, to be honest. So this one was kind of a dud, but it was also like $6. And it did come, like the kits that I was looking at were sealed. So it did come with all the materials, which is something that you, I think, have to be a little worried about when you're buying it from a thrift store, especially if it's opened. Like, you don't know if all the materials are in there. On eBay, it'll typically say like sealed, and so they should have all the materials unless some weird shenanigans happened. So that was my experience with the kit. I didn't like it, and I honestly, I mean, I guess it does say on the front that it has this outline situation, but it did make me like, I don't know if I would buy like an old kit from a thrift store again. But then, is that really any different than buying old kits off of eBay, which I've had a lot of success with? I don't know. I'm not really sure on that one. The point is, I did not like this. This was the only dud. However, I got 2 other things from the creative reuse place over the past few months that I love. And the first one, it's actually like, I guess, the first vintage pattern I ever bought, because I went to Austin Creative Reuse for the first time in like November. And it is fresh fruit teapots. I think they're super cute. This one is just like a 2-pager. And it just has a bunch of fresh fruit teapots. And the back has 2 teapots, and then each page in the middle has 2 teapots. And I just think they're super cute, and I thought it would be really fun to stitch one on, to just stitch one and like put it up in my kitchen. I don't know, I think I want a kitchen full of cross stitch. This is what I want. Maybe like the hens, they're sipping from like this lemon teapot. Wouldn't it be like kind of spicy if like I made them use the pineapple teapot? I don't think I would stitch the pineapple teapot, to be honest. I think pineapples have been kind of ruined for me. If you know, you know. If you don't know, Google it. Google pineapple decor. I think out of these, I would probably stitch the lemon and the apple. Because I do actually make apple tea sometimes, and I just think the lemon is really cute. And it's Stitch World X Stitch Fresh Fruit Teapots. It's from... I don't really understand how these don't have any dates on them, to be honest. How are they publishing them without a date? Like, how is there not a publishing page on this? I don't really know how that works. Like, I don't... How is this published without a date? It has a publisher, Stitch World. I'm sure they don't exist anymore. I don't know. But yeah, this one also comes with, you can either do Anchor or DMC. But again, like, I'm not really sure I don't know how, I think it's old. It's gotta be old. Maybe it came in a magazine or something, and that's why they don't have a date. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, like I said, it comes with a DMC, or it comes with like a DMC list. I don't know how well that would match up with today's DMC, but I'm interested. And then the last one that I have, sad, the haul's over. Circles of the Sea. I love this. So it's 4 patterns, and each one is, it's not full coverage, but it's almost full coverage of these really beautiful, just like sea pattern, like under the sea patterns. And the back has like the same 4 patterns, just in a different arrangement, I guess. But I think they're so beautiful. I definitely want to stitch one, at least. I will say this is the floss conversion chart. I think they all use the same list of flosses. That's hefty. This would be like, this would be hard to stitch, is what I'm trying to say. Oh, in the middle they've got another spread of all of the charts. Why do they have 6? Did they repeat one? No. Am I going crazy? There's only 4 on the front. Are there 6 patterns? Is that? Clearly, I should have looked through this better. I also feel like the light is getting dark and I can't help that. I'm sorry. And then each pattern is split up over 2 pages. So again, that would be hard. These like booklets and kits, I don't think are for the weak of heart. I'm gonna be honest. This one's kind of cool. It says, special thanks to my professional stitchers. So these women must have done like the, let me see if I can just like, okay, no. The light is what it is. I guess these women must have been the ones who test stitched it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's literally only 4 patterns. So how are there 6 here? Oh, it's literally the same pattern twice. That's really weird. How did I not notice that immediately? It's embarrassing on my part. Why are they framed differently? It's kind of weird. And then she also like lists all of the women who framed and finished them. Yeah, I don't know. It's from Cross Stitch My Heart. Let's see if I can find a date. It's from Huntsville, Alabama. It's not going to give me a date. I don't understand how these are published without a date. How? 1995. So like, what is that, 30 years ago? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Was not born yet. But yeah, she's very cool. I love her. I'm definitely going to stitch this at some point, but it's definitely more of an undertaking than the other ones. That's what I have. So now that we've gone through the haul, I figured I'd show you kind of what comes in the kit. Now we just brained again. Video editing, this is gonna be fun. What comes actually in the kits. So for my chickens, it comes with this beige Ada. Pretty easy. It's just like, it's a pretty small piece. I should really stitch this because it means that those chickens are really not that big. And then this is, I think there are 2 main pitfalls of vintage patterns and kits. The first one, the floss. This is how the floss comes. It's just tied in a knot. And you have to separate the floss, and it's a nightmare. Some people like separating floss. I don't. From what I've done. It kind of stresses me out. But I will say, if you just dedicate some time to the beginning of your project, it's fine. Also, like Mill Hills, they come with floss like this. And so there are still some modern kits where you get floss like this. I do think this is the main benefit to getting modern kits, is that the floss will come already separated into floss cards. And also their patterns are a little easier. So yeah, that's what the floss comes like. And my best recommendation is floss drops. I think like the old-fashioned way to do it is to punch holes in a note card with like tape to make sure it doesn't rip, and then label all the floss like that. It's a lot of work. So I have these floss chips from Adam Hart Floss Drops. Adam Hart Cross Stitch, I guess. She makes floss drops and floss. These are floss chips, so they're smaller. And I find that these work perfectly. I actually really only use these for my kits. I may end up using them. I like bought them to use them for my regular patterns, but I find that this is really what I've used them for. So this is all the floss for the Wizards kit that I have. And the issue is, you'll notice none of them are labeled because the floss doesn't really have labels. So when you're doing like, when you're dividing up your floss for a modern day kit, it'll be like the symbol X, well, X is a bad example. The $ is DMC 906. Easy. Well, in these kits, I have frankly no idea what kind of floss they use. And they're gonna be labeled dark purple, light purple, lightest purple, medium purple, gold, yellow gold, peach gold, taupe. I had to Google what taupe was. I'm gonna be so real. And so it's kind of hard to, that was the thing that I found the most difficulty with. I think it requires a little bit of guessing, a little bit of gradient matching, and honestly just like matching when you start the pattern and it says like, okay, this requires taupe. It requires like looking at where that spot is on the cover photo and being like, oh, that's the color. But this is how I would recommend sorting your flosses. I think this is the best way to do it. I know Caroline from the Thread Gremlins had Denise from her local LNS. I love hearing them talk about Denise. She sorted all of her flosses on a note card. So if you want to see that, go check out their channel. That would be the other way to do this, I think. This was just like the easiest way for me, and I find it just keeps, I mean, if you're on FlossTube, you probably use floss drops. I actually don't really, but you know, it just keeps them neat. This is the benefit that I've seen to floss drops, is these kinds of kits. And then to show you what one of the pattern, like what one of the, I can't show you the pattern obviously, but I can show you the stitch. So this is the one that I started. It's that Wizards kit by Dimensions, 14 count Aida, pretty small piece again. I would recommend starting in the center for all your kits because you just don't know how much margin you're gonna have. And then you can see, I think the stitches look fine. You know, they're like not super dense like they would be on a higher count, but I think they look fine. And yeah, this kit I've had nothing but praise for. Although the skin color for the wizard, that's like pink. Dude's from like Ireland or something. I will also say, I think so there are two reasons why modern kits are better. One, floss is separated. Two, patterns are better. This is a black and red pattern. So some of the symbols are in black, some of them are in red. And then it'll be like a red heart is one color, a black heart is another color. And I really like patterns that have both symbols and the colors. So if it's like dark green, it's gonna be like a dark green $sign on the pattern. So sometimes you can get lost in the pattern. Also, I prefer to PDF stitch generally, and I have to use a paper pattern for this, which is not my fave. I found that once you get going, it's not too bad, but it's kind of hard to start on. It's pretty easy to get lost. You just kind of have to roll with it. I think like in the future, the goal is to eventually scan these patterns and put them into Markup RXP. I know people have had like varying levels of success with that. That's my eventual goal. I just don't have a scanner, and I could go to the library and do it, or I could wait until I go home and use my mom's scanner. That's kind of the plan there. Scanning these is really not that hard. It just depends on what your access is. And then I'm not sure, again, how they would import. I would think, based on what I've heard, it'd be easier to import into Markup RXP rather than Pattern Keeper, because you can pretty easily adjust the grid in Markup RXP. It's not too difficult. The thing is, you just need a really clean scan, I would think, because like I've taken a pretty good photo of the picture, like of the pattern, and tried to put it into Markup RXP, and that just didn't work. Like the lines weren't straight enough in the photo. So that's what I have to say about the kits. Last but not least, I want to go into kind of what I thought about each platform and what my thoughts are, I guess, on it as a whole. So, one, really liked eBay. The way that I like to do eBay and is most fun for me is I like to bid on things. This one stops me from just like one-click buying things. Although, you know, if you put a bid in, you can cancel it, as we found out. But like, you know, if you put in a bid in, you're not automatically guaranteed to get it. And so you might be like, well, I'm willing to pay this amount of money. for this pattern or this kit. And you put that in, and if it goes higher, you say, okay, well, I'm not going to get it. And so I find that's a pretty good way to keep to a budget. You can also make an offer, which I've done. Some sellers will be like, make me an offer. And I typically price it lower, obviously, than what they have said. And if they accept it, I buy it. If they don't, I don't buy it. So I feel like in some ways eBay is like pretty easy to keep to a budget on if you do it that way. So I just don't really do the one-click eBay thing. And I think also a lot of those kits are not priced. Like I'm looking for a bargain on eBay. I'm not like buying kits off of like Wizardy. Those are like full price kits. And I don't want that. If I wanted to buy a full price kit, then I would on like a regular site. If I'm looking for vintage cross stitch kits, I'm looking for a bargain. The other platform that I used was Facebook Dstash. I've never used Facebook Marketplace. People have, I've seen them, but I just don't see cross stitch on my Facebook Marketplace unless it's shipped, and I don't like trust that for some reason. Facebook Dstash, I have mixed opinions on. I think Facebook Dstash is really fun to be in and to lurk. To be a buyer is a little bit more complicated because, so for the pattern that I bought, you don't really get a tracking number if you buy one pattern, from what I understand. Also, tracking like requires more money, and so if you're just buying one pattern, you might not want a tracking number. The issue is you're not getting a notification that it's shipped. And for some people that's like not a huge issue, but for me, I need to be like pretty on top of my mail because sometimes it gets delivered to the wrong address. I live in Unit B, and so sometimes it gets delivered to Unit A. And so for a while, I was like, Unit A has my cross stitch, which has happened. They kept the birthday fairies. It was like on their kitchen table for like 2 weeks until I asked them if they had it. And they were like, oh, is this yours? I'm like, it has my name on it. Why did you open it? Anyways, it's another story for another day. So that was kind of like if you live in an apartment building where sometimes packages get stolen or mail gets mixed up, or you live on a lot with 2 different buildings like I do, then not having tracking is stressful and annoying. And then also, it's just a girl. Like, it's just a woman or a guy. It's not, I think on eBay in some ways, like, I'm like, that's a seller. But on Facebook, it's just a guy. And so, like, I bought the State Flowers cross stitch, got an invoice, paid it, and then I never heard anything. And I was like, does Unit A have it? Did they not send it? So after a couple weeks, I emailed, and I checked the rules of the Dstash group, and it said that you have to ship them like pretty much immediately. But the rules were pretty old. So then I emailed the seller, and I was like, hey, or I PM'd them on Facebook, and I was like, hey, I haven't gotten this yet. Have you shipped it yet? Like, I just want to know where it is in the process to know if there's an issue. Like, did USPS lose it? Did it get delivered to the wrong address? Are you scamming me? And then immediately got a shipping notification that a label had been created. So I didn't even know you could get track shipping that way, but I guess it did have track shipping in the end. I think the seller had just forgotten to send it to me, to be honest, for like 2 weeks. And I eventually got it, so it wasn't a big deal. I didn't say anything to them once I got the tracking notification, but like that did make me a little bit nervous. I just think that's a little crazy, to be honest. It was kind of weird. So I don't know. I would also say, kind of going into more of my tips and tricks, always look up the cross stitch pattern before you buy it, because a lot of Dstash groups sell them for the same price as 123 Stitch, or only $1 cheaper. And I think it kind of depends on what you're looking to get out of your vintage shopping experience. Like, if you really want to buy secondhand and you want to buy from an old cross stitch lady who's selling off her stash, or you know a like Cross Stitch the Globe. I love watching their vintage hauls. I love watching them talk about their D-stash. I haven't bought anything from that. I think they price fairly, but they're not huge discounts because they're just like, they're trying to make money, which is like totally fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying it kind of depends on what you're looking to get out of it, because Cross Stitch the Globe is a little bit different because like I've watched Stephanie do this for like a year, and so it would be cool to buy something for her. But if it's just a random woman on Facebook D-stash, I don't know that I really care. So if they're selling, like, I really want to get Prairie Schoolers. Part of me kind of wants to start a collection of Prairie Schoolers. I haven't bought a single one because I see them on D-stash. I look them up on 123 Stitch. It's the same price. 123 Stitch has a flat shipping rate of $3.95, and they're really good at shipping. They're in the same state as me, so their shipping is really fast. Every shipment they do is going to be tracked shipping. I'm never going to have to worry if it's going to come to me. And so to me, it's not worth it to buy the same thing on Facebook D-stash or even eBay, where it's a little bit more of a gray area in terms of trust. And I personally, in that sense, don't super care about buying secondhand versus firsthand. Like, I know a lot of people collect the Prairie Schooler cardstock, which I think is different than what 123 Stitch sells. I don't care about that. To me, like, I want to buy secondhand clothing. That I see more. But when I'm thinking about the landfill, I don't know if I'm thinking like a Prairie Schooler. And some people really care about that, and that's totally fine. But I just personally don't, and so a lot of D-stash in the end doesn't end up being a good deal, which I think you would not expect. That's one of the reasons that I like eBay, because these vintage kits are not sold on 123 Stitch. So it's like you're getting these old kits that were made in the 80s and 90s, and they're not sold anywhere else, and they're cool, and they're a little piece of history. And that is more worth it to me. So I'd say always look up the price of the kit or the pattern before you buy it. And then the other thing I want to say is, and this is going to kind of go into my next segment, which is, this video is getting so long for 7 patterns, but I think I want to talk about haul. I want to talk about collecting, and I want to talk about haul. I feel like most people won't make it to this part of the video, but it's important to me to talk about because I see a lot of floss tubers and cross stitchers amass quite a bit of haul, collect a lot of cross stitch, collect a lot of vintage cross stitch, and then make videos about it. And I do not have an issue with that. You're allowed to spend your money on what you want. I do think for the average person, that's not realistic. And it's not necessarily a good idea. Like I said, right now I live in a really small house, and I'm gonna move into a really small apartment. I won't be able to afford like my own house for like 20 years. My own craft room? That's a pipe dream, babe. So all of my cross stitch stuff needs to fit. I literally just got a craft cart, and I'm like, it's gotta all fit on the cart. Because even getting a craft cart, that was like a piece of furniture that like I now have to move from place to place and has to fit in my space. So I think getting a lot of stuff is not realistic. It's also just not always financially responsible. Again, if you have the money, you can spend your money on what you want. I think in today's economy, like, a lot of people don't have the money. I don't have the money to build up a huge stash of fancy fabric, fancy floss, these cool patterns. Part of the reason that I like doing vintage patterns is that there's more to it for me than just stitching from them, because I think they're really cool to look at and to think about. So it's a little bit more worth it to me to buy them without any immediate plans to stitch them. But in the end, I plan on stitching something from all of these. I would not buy it if I didn't have some sort of plan for it. And so, like, I'm gonna make this haul video, and then I'm probably not gonna buy another vintage pattern for at least 6 months. I'm done. with the online marketplace. I was like, I've hit my limit and I'm making this video because it's fun, and then I'm not gonna buy anymore. The exception being, I would love to like start looking at estate sales for cross stitch, and I think that would be fun, where your limit is like $1 per pattern. And I think that there's sort of this idea that you have to build up a lot of stash and you have to build up a lot of patterns, and you know, collecting is a different hobby than stitching. I know that a lot of people like to say that. I don't know that I really agree with. I think it depends. I think if you have the means, then yeah. But I just don't know if like the average person, that's necessarily true. Like if you look back here, these are my books. And when I've always been a huge reader, and when I was sent home from college in 2020 because of COVID, I got back into reading, and then I got back into buying books. And a lot of people say that buying books is a different hobby than owning books. I can sort of see that, except for the fact I bought way too many books. It stressed me out so much because I was like, I'm never gonna read all of these. I read a lot, but I don't read like a book a day. And I'm also carting all these books from place to place. And so eventually it got to the point where I leave most of my books in my childhood home, and I take one shelf with me. And I'm still working on it, okay? Some of these books are like 4 or 5 years old at this point, and I'm still working through my physical TBR, and it does kind of stress me out. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy having that stash. Some people would, some people do. Like some people want a personal library. I would love a personal library. When I'm gonna have a personal library? Yeah, 20 years from now. So I wanna say, I guess the point of that is to say, hauls are not realistic. These like huge stash situations are not realistic. Again, if you do them, I love you. I consume your content. I live vicariously through you. But I just want to say they're not realistic for a lot of people, and that's totally fine. And I think sometimes when you see vintage patterns, you're like, I gotta get that. I gotta get it. And I want you to, one, look up the price to see if it's worth it. And two, there's so much stuff you can stitch out there. You don't necessarily need that exact pattern. I love my birthday fairies, but let's be honest, there's a billion cross stitch fairies out there. And so like and some people will like collect patterns because they might go out of print. I like it, I'll buy it now in case it goes out of print later. I think that makes sense for certain things like mirabilias. They do go out of print, and mirabilia is such a unique style. But if you see a fancy lady and you're like, I love that fancy lady, there's a lot of fancy ladies out there, babe. If it goes out of print in 10 years, pick another fancy lady, you know? Just don't feel like you have to start these collections. You have to buy them. You need it, because you don't. There's a lot of cross stitch out there. Cross stitch takes a long time to stitch. Start whatever you want, buy whatever you want, but don't feel pressured to, is all I'm saying. So I wanted to include some resources at the end of this that I would recommend if you're looking for new cross stitch patterns. You want that start dopamine, you want that like collector hoarder dopamine, because I get it. I love it. I'm just traumatized from moving all the time. For free, where you can get that for free. The biggest recommendation that I have is the library. There's two different forms. One is Libby. That's an app, but you can also access it on your laptop. And what you do is you connect your library card to the app, and then you get access to all their ebooks. And a lot of places have cross-stitch ebooks. They're really only going to have modern cross-stitch ebooks, but they're going to have like, they're going to have a lot of really common ones like Emma Congdon. Is his name Max Pitchin? The guy who does like the outdoorsy scenes. They have them all. They also have like a crap load of magazines. So you can literally go through the magazine, pick out a pattern. So there are like hundreds of patterns that you can get through these books and magazines on Libby. And you can just screenshot the pattern, or you can snip it. If you don't know what snipping is, it's a way of like selectively screenshotting. It's called snip and sketch. Just Google it. but you screenshot it, you snip it, you've got it forever. Stitch it. And that's a really easy, low-cost way to do that. And then I think a lot of magazines kind of have that older style that a lot of people like when they see vintage patterns. And then you have the books, which are more modern. And then also your physical library, if you go on their website to see what's available, especially if I've never really lived in like a smaller city, to be honest. Like the smallest place I've lived is Savannah, and honestly their library system kind of sucked. Sorry. But like, well, their ebook system was not great because it was like a Georgia ebook system. So it wasn't like specific to Savannah, so then there were holds on everything. But they did have like pretty nice physical locations. And right now in Austin, if I Google like cross stitch books, there's a ton of vintage actual cross stitch books, like physical books that you can get at the library. Now it depends on like what branch, like they're scattered amongst the branches, but you can request it at your library. You can put a hold on it at the one that's nearest to you, and you can get that. So I think people are kind of onto Libby, but I would also really recommend checking out the physical selections at your library. The physical selections for cross stitch books at your library, because I think they're gonna have more than you expect, and they're gonna have those older styles, and they're also gonna have like vintage alphabets, vintage motifs that are really cool to look at. I would also say you can request books for your library to buy. I don't know necessarily how this would work with vintage books. Like you can't request an out of print book. So I think this would be easier with like the newer, like magical cross stitch or something books, but you can request books for your library to buy, and people don't do that. And so I've done it twice. I did it at the Boston Public Library and the DC Public Library, which has hundreds of thousands of users, and both of the times they bought them because the people don't realize they can request books. So you can like put a request in for them to buy something, and odds are they will, and it's totally free. So yeah, I just wanted to say, don't have to buy it if you don't want to. Don't feel pressured to buy it. And if you want to start something, or you want to look at patterns, or you want to start hoarding, but you don't really want to actually hoard, there are a lot of free options out there that mostly have to do with your library. And then as a bonus, I did get this guy off Facebook Marketplace for the background of my floss tube, $5. Facebook Marketplace is goated for furniture, I will say. Essentially all of my furniture. The chair I'm sitting on, Facebook Marketplace. But yeah, that's my vintage pattern kit haul, plus some tips and tricks, some musings. I hope you enjoyed. If you made it to the end of this video, put a book emoji, maybe, for the cross-stitch books we love and the libraries we love. And I hope y'all enjoyed. I will see you soon. Bye.